Hello everyone, this is In-Game Arts with another boxing, another offline party game review. This is RoboCop Rogue City for the PlayStation 5. Did you upgrade into it? This physical copy here just comes with the base vanilla version of the game, so the on-disc version is 1.0.0. Now sadly there was an update available. This update size was 2.5 gigabytes big and will take you to version 1.5.0 since the time making this video. Now like always, I play all my games completely offline with an unregistered account, and I cannot say that my experience was flawless, but I did beat the game and I even platinumed the game. So yes, I was still unlocking trophies with my unregistered account. Now, I did 100% complete RoboCop Rogue City, but my experience was not the most smoothest experience. Definitely an early build version of RoboCop Rogue City, which is fairly disappointing. As well, I do want to admit I did play the entire game on performance mode, as well as on normal difficulty. Now, to jump right into it, the game does have some glaring issues, but the overall gaming experience was relatively enjoyable. I will talk about some of my bug issues before I go into details of the game. First off, lip syncing. Lip syncing is definitely off sometimes, or sometimes mouth movements won't even move at all. Most time, just lip syncing seems a little bit off or odd at times. Not that big of a deal. Frame rate drops. Some significant frame rate drops at certain moments. The game generally runs at 60 frames, but there are several moments of the game will suffer massive frame rate drops. It's consistently random in specific areas. The game has ray tracing on all the time, every time, and even if you update the game still has ray tracing that you cannot disable. At least it wasn't when my quick checkup of the update. So the game is a forced ray tracing, and I do believe the game would be running a lot better if you could disable the ray tracing in the game. So that's very disappointing. As well as I do want to point out, I had a massive frame rate problem issue in a specific area where you go into like a steel mill working factory area and there's a bunch of snipers everywhere. The frame rate dropped so low, it had to have been like 12 frames per second. At first, I couldn't figure out what was causing it, because as I went outside and had all these snipers aiming at me, the game just tanked in frame rate. Now, I couldn't even attack these enemies because the frame rate just kept stuttering all over the place, so basically I just had to run from them. At first, I thought if I ran through them and got away at this big open area with all these snipers, it would fix itself. But as I got into a more enclosed area, the game was still doing the stuttering. All I could have done was just I closed out the game and reboot it back up, and wherever the autosave was, it fixed the frame rate issue. I did backtrack to see if it continued, but it didn't. So there could have been maybe not a frame rate issue, but just something loaded up wrong, and all I had to do was reload it. But anyways, that was a massive gameplay affecting experience. Next one is that there is only one save in the game. Now the game has an autosave feature. There is no manually saving in the game, which I think is a huge design flaw. Thankfully though, if you go to the load section in the pause menu, it does have multiple autosaves. So if there is a bug issue or problem that you came across, the game does have multiple autosaves. So you might be able to backtrack a little bit if you load an older save from an autosave. Luckily, it's not all just one save that just keeps saving over itself. Thankfully, it makes multiple autosave backups, so at least that's decently. I would have preferred a save state. The reason they probably didn't do this, because the game does have some dialogue choices that can affect the game, and they wanted to prevent people from abusing save scumming, where you make a decision, then you reload it because you didn't like the outcome, and you try to look for the most favorable choice. Generally, these games try to design a way where you cannot do that. Preferably, I don't prefer that. I just give me the save state, and if I want to reload a game, that's up to me. Soft lock in the game, I was looking at clues in the game, like you have to zoom in and look at clues. A character's like little question marks you're supposed to see. I looked at the question mark and it would never load up or register it at all. I just basically had to restart the entire autosave and go back to that area, and then it was working. So I did have a minor soft lock moment in the game. There was a dumpster where at first there was a character who ran into that dumpster, and then I solved that kind of side quest, and then that quest was still active, so I was able to reopen up that dumpster even though there was no one in there, and it would crash the game every single time I did this. So if you do that quest and you see that dumpster still interactable, do not interact with that dumpster because it will crash your game. Next up, loud audio moments. The game has some very inconsistent audios at moments, so bear that in mind if you have sensitive ears or you're worried about your headphones or speakers or something like that. The game's audios can peak pretty high at certain moments in certain situations, so just bear that in mind. I've always been a pet peeve about that. I've never liked high peak audio. I like audio to stay steadily the same within the same range. Next up, there's a character named Soot, and this is part of the main quest, so do not freak out when this happens. When you find him, he is hiding, and you gotta, like, confront him and get a confession out of him, and to get him to confess, you have to destroy this property. But when you do interact with him, the game will kind of, like, freak out, and the character will fall through the floor. He's still there and he's still talking, but you can't see him, and he actually even has a number indicator how far he's falling from you. It's just a bug. Just destroy some guitars around the game and it automatically fixes itself and you get the dialogue. So don't freak out thinking you can't progress. Just destroy the guitars and it will correct itself. As well as I did have one moment where respawning stuff, there was it's the same area with the steel mill. I was talking about the frame rate drops. There was a quest or side quest stuff you can do before you do the main stuff. I did the side quest stuff first, and then I did the main quest and came back, and I realized that some of these side quest areas had some respawned up loot. And I went back in those areas, and it actually respawned loot, and there was even a quest one we had to rescue a hostage. I've already rescued the hostage, but when I rescued him again, the game couldn't register the fact that he's being saved again. So the game immediately crashed every single time I tried rescuing that hostage. So just bear that in mind. Just try to be careful about backtracking, because you could pick up some extra loot, or it could crash your game because you are interlooping stuff you've already done. Next up, there was one time a cutscene played out that was wrong. There in the police station, we were looking at a TV, and I was supposed to hear a statement from the mayor, and the mayor's video got cut off, and it went back to the news anchor, and the news anchor was speaking the mayor's dialogue. It was really weird. I was very confused at first. I thought it was like, was this part of the game? Because why does he sound like the mayor? It was just clearly a bug. It was playing the wrong cutscene over another cutscene, so just keep that in mind. As well as that, I did have one time an enemy fell to the ground. Why this was a bad experience is that I had to kill all enemies before I could progress. So I was really worried I would have had to restart this entire section again. But thankfully, the top of his head just peeked out just a little bit through the ground, and I was able to kill him. That was one time throughout the entire experience that happened, but I got lucky to be able to kill him. Next up, this is not really a bug or issue. I was a little disappointed that you play the city part four times in this game. There's a city section in the game. You kind of run around, got to do some side quests and stuff like that. And they introduced that city part 4 times in the game, and it got a little tedious. And that's about it. There's probably a few little other bugs and issues that maybe I didn't really register or notice or didn't write it down. But for the most part, that was over my experience. Overall, very disappointing build version of the game on disc, but I did beat it and I 100% completed and even platinum the game. So the game is still full functional and playable and beatable from the disc. It's just you're not going to have the most smoothest experience, and as I said, there's some massive frame rate drops and issues, but be perfectly honest, I'm willing to overlook it. I know that's dumb, and I agree that shouldn't be overlooked, but I just had a blast playing RoboCop Rogue City. I was pleasantly surprised at how well the game is. The game is not a polished game like Cyberpunk 2077. The voice acting's not good, the animation's not good, the graphics is nowhere near as good. It's just something about the game just felt very refreshing. A lot of times you play as a thug or a vigilante that's working or against the police. It was very, very refreshing to get to play as a police officer. Now, granted, this is RoboCop, so there is some massive action and doing stuff that a cop wouldn't normally do, but you still do some cop activities, and I thought that was really refreshing. It was a really good, enjoyable experience, and the game actually felt like a reverse boomer shooter, where in boomer shooters you generally have a high-speed action blasting away at enemies at high speed and you're trying to avoid getting hit. While in RoboCop, it's the same thing, but now you're just a slow walking tank and you taking a bunch of bullets. There's no cover system or anything like that, and you're just welling on all these enemies and dropping them really quickly. It just felt very refreshing and very new at the time, for me anyway, for this experience. Story-wise, I thought was pretty good. It did follow many of the cliches of the 1980s, 1990s main action movies and stuff like that. I thought they did a pretty good job. The voice acting and characters, while it is a bit stiff and animation's a bit stiff, and of course lip-syncing, the voice acting was fairly decent, and some of the side quests and the main quest was very, very good. I personally enjoyed this game largely more than I did with the entirety of Cyberpunk 2077. While that game still had bugs, and while it did work a lot better than RoboCop Rogue City, I just had more fun. The game had a more streamlined, focused experience. The story was a lot more, I don't know, the story's about even, but I did enjoy the more focused experience, not this huge open world. It's open world sections, and I've always talked about this. I don't mean that I like linear games. I just don't like huge, expansive worlds. I like focused level design, and that's why I like the Souls series from Software, the Dark Souls, Demon Souls, Bloodborne. That's why I love those games so much, because they got a really focused level design, and RoboCop Rogue City has somewhat that as well. The only complaint is the city part. Like I said, you had to do that city part 4 times, and that got a little tedious. At first I was okay with it, but since it did it 4 times, it got really old pretty quickly. But at least it still kept progressing. It still kept moving forward. It didn't feel like it was wasting my time, nowhere near as much as like Cyberpunk 2077 did. And I did like some of the dialogue options and how it can affect certain sections in the game. The weapons and guns all felt good and sounded good. Near the end of normal difficulty, I had all my stats maxed out, and I had the most ultimate pistol that I was basically one-shotting every enemy and every boss. Now, this was on normal difficulty. I'm actually quite curious to run through this game again. Even with this buggy state, I would gladly play this game again on the highest difficulty. Even though I platinumed the game, I've done everything. I'm pretty interested in playing the game again. Now, that is disappointingly, there is no New Game Plus, nor does anything unlockable by just normal play. Maybe on higher difficulties, maybe something unlockable, but I doubt it. That's really disappointing. We've seen that a lot lately, where you beat a game and you get nothing for it. I'm getting really tired of seeing that. Or New Game Plus comes as later as an update. I don't know what is with this thing, these basic design aspects that are just missing in games. But the core experience was functional and beatable and playable and enjoyable. It's just disappointingly that this game clearly got rushed out. This is an early build version of the game, and there is some clear issues. And again, your experience could vary much differently from mine. As I've always said, bugs can be fickle. You can go through the entire game and experience every single game-breaking bug, crash, freeze up, lock up, you name it. And while I went through the entire game, and I never once had the game crash. I had one soft lock, and that was it. Everything else, I was able to press through and beat it. Now, there could have been another soft lock with an enemy falling to the ground, but luckily I was able to progress by just popping the tip of his head with my gun. In the end, RoboCop Rogue City is a phenomenal pickup for the game. Physical copy, it is, as much as it pains me, it is somewhat a bad product. It is a functional working game, but you're going to have some issues, and I really hope we can maybe see a reprint version of the game. Whether named for PlayStation 6 Elite or Pro, whatever it's called now, get a new updated version of the game that can, like, definitive edition, or maybe the Switch 2 or something, get a physical version for that on that. Just whatever we can get to get a new updated physical copy of this game, because it is very well done, and I think they captured the experience and essence of RoboCop really good. Not a movie or a theme I really enjoy personally myself, but I did enjoy this game, and it just paints it even more that it's such a buggy experience. So like always, thank you all so much for watching. I will try to leave links down in the description if you answer a copy. For the most part, it is well worth a look. Maybe not for full price since of all the bugs and issues for the physical copy, but if you can get a used copy, $30, maybe $40, I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised at how enjoyable this game is. So like always, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next unboxing video. Bye-bye!